Thank you all for coming. How are we doing today?
Good.
Welcome to our beautiful office. We're really lucky to be here for sure. Sometimes I get like pinched.
Don't listen to construction.
Yeah, just normally there's not like 6 tractors out there moving sand, but sometimes I have to get reminded every time someone new comes down here and says, wow, this is a beautiful place. It really is. Because we can really do anything that we want here. You know, any shot that someone needs to work on, we can replicate here, which is what makes this place really special. When I first came out here in 2021, pretty much to interview, and I saw this place, I said, this is the spot. Because when you're talking about player development, you need to be able to hit all the shots that you're going to encounter out on the golf course, and this place really allows us to do that. So special thanks to Rolling Hills and to Blair for helping us put this together. And I've got some really exciting info. No one else has really heard this yet except you guys. I'm still kind of in the process of putting it together, but had a really amazing opportunity to gather some data from Epson Tour players. For those of you that might not know, Epson Tour is the level just below the LPGA Tour, because short game is a really hot topic right now in the industry for a bunch of reasons. And so definitely want to talk about that today. But as I was putting this presentation together, my wife said, you know, you should really start with your journey and how you started to get into that because it ties in nicely, and like 100% of the time, she's always right. So I added that in there. So just wanted to kind of start from there and go through why I'm doing what I'm doing, because at the end of the day, I think it's more about that. I didn't get into golf instruction to make money. I really got into it just to learn, because I wasn't a gifted golfer growing up. I couldn't go out and shoot 63. If I shot around in the 70s, I was thrilled. And I really wanted to understand what the best players in the world were doing and why I wasn't doing it. So kind of getting into it here, apologies, I have to click twice, just so that we can see it. Can everyone see everything here too, by the way? Okay, I know the glare's a little bit often. But this is a funny moment. So this is really the moment that it clicked for me, because I didn't get into golf until, gosh, maybe around 11. I don't remember the exact age. I've been trying to find that out. But that would be an image from my first golf lesson. And for those of you, I'm sure most of you in this room know, the old JC video carts, the yellow computers that you'd have to pull out. I was playing for a little while, went into high school, tried out for our golf team, definitely was one of the worst players on the team because we had a pretty good team at that time. And so I said, I need to get some lessons, right? So asked around. There was a former LPGA teaching professional that was somewhat in my area, being from central Pennsylvania. Nothing was really close, so I had to drive about 45 minutes to an hour. And for the longest time, I would practice my swing in the mirror at home. Actually, it wasn't even a mirror. It was a sliding patio door. And I would just make swings of me looking in there, being like, oh yeah, I'm going to get in this really good spot. Because I would listen to Peter Costas talk about how steady Tiger Woods' head was when I was watching PGA Tour events. I said, oh, I'm going to do that too. And so I thought going to my first lesson, I was going to look like Tiger Woods. But that's what I looked like right there. Probably to this day, probably the biggest reverse pivot I've ever seen, right? Maybe some of you have seen worse. I've seen some that have come close, but when someone asked me, they're like, John, you know, I must do this the most of anyone you've ever seen. I said, no, I probably did. And then plus the outfit is quite astonishing there too. We've come a long way. But that was the moment there that it clicked for me, because that was the first time I saw myself on video. And I thought I looked like Tiger Woods. And so when I saw that, I was like, that's not me. It's like, I look like Tiger Woods. My left arm's like this. I'm tilted over my right side. So that's when I was very, very interested by what I saw. And so from that point, I was really hooked on that. I didn't have video cameras at the time, so I spent as much time as I could on the range practicing. And from there, went to Penn State, found out there was a program called Professional Golf Management. Some of you may have heard of that. A lot of universities have that now, including Coastal Carolina, Eastern Kentucky, Campbell, a lot of really good universities. And so that just does a really good job of getting you into the industry and combining your PGA bookwork with your regular undergrad bookwork. And one of the things that was given to us in, I think it was our second year, they gave us an iPod Nano. Do you ever remember what that is? And small little, probably a quarter the size of the phone, and it had a screen that was about 1 inch big, wide and tall. And I thought that this was the greatest thing ever because they said for some of your requirements for school, you have to film yourself doing the videos, film the lessons that you're doing for the PGA bookwork. And I used it just to film my own golf swing, right? Because I was obsessed with that. I said, well, how can I get, and I'd go on the little thing and just frame by frame, couldn't see the club, it was blurry as can be, but trying to get closer and closer. So I just became obsessed with filming my golf swing and figuring out what I needed to feel, what I needed to do to get myself in a position that top players were in. So that was a fun journey there. And from that point, Penn State was really, I mean, honestly, I wouldn't change anything being at Penn State just because their network was so intertwined. Internships every year. They had such a broad network there, really valuable. And from there, after I did 4 internships, I went to the Jim McLean Golf School down in, used to be Doral. At the time, it was Doral, Florida. Anyone been to Doral? Yeah. Y'all should go. It's a fun place. It's an amazing place. He's no longer at Doral. He's at the place called the Biltmore, which is right down the road in Coral Gables. But that was really, really important in my development because I was around so many top teachers at the time. And just being able to chat with them and brainstorm, hey, what do you think would help this person? What do you think would help this person? Because everyone there was like me. They just wanted to get people better. So that really played a big role in my development. I was only there just over a year when an opportunity came up to go work for James Lights at someone gets a prize if they can pronounce that. Anyone want to take a guess? Close. Yeah, pretty much, yeah. Tchefuncte Country Club. And my parents were like, are you sure you want to go to a place that you can't pronounce the name? But has anyone heard of James Lights? If you haven't, you should definitely go out to see him sometime. He, in my opinion, would be one of the founding fathers with TrackMan. So he had, I think, it was the second unit of TrackMan, the big box, right? And so he, exactly like me, wanted to find out what the best players in the world were doing. So he invested in all the technology. I've got a couple great stories from him, which I'll share. Also, incredible club fitter too. So I learned a lot from him on that. And then probably one of the saddest things I ever did was go back from James, because he's just such an amazing person, back to the Jim McLean Golf School, but to oversee the Miami Beach Golf Club location, which is right down the road. So I was there for 3.5, 4 years, and then opportunity came up to come out here. And like I said, as soon as I saw this place, I knew this would be a long-term position for sure, just because of player development.
Were you there at the Jim McLean with Jordan Thomas at the same time?
No, different time.
Different time.
And just missed Devin Bonebreak as well. But ultimately, that's how I met Devin, just because Devin Bonebreak was a Jim McLean disciple as well, and I saw that he was out here, and so we connected a few years before I came out here. And it's amazing where the network kind of leads you. And as I go through this, if you have any questions, I think these presentations work really, really well when they're very interactive. So if you have any questions, just shout them out or raise your hand, feel free. So obviously along my journey, run into some technology, right? And so that's really right as video was really, really popular. And then I feel like there was just a boom for the technology here with 3D motion capture, gears, all these systems that just help measure things, right? And that's really where I feel like we are today. I'm going to talk a little bit about that at the end as well. Obviously, TrackMan Foresight, what they're doing down at TPI is incredible. It really is. I think they do things the right way. We have so many force plates. Obviously, GASP is one of them, which we have here. Swing Catalyst, Smart to Move, Sam Putt Lab, which we have back behind you. So all those devices I've had exposure to, which is, I think, great because it really helps us learn what's actually happening. These are just a few of the names. Gosh, there's so many, but these are just a few of the names that really have influenced my teaching since coming out here. I mean, I had met Chris Mason and Dana Dahlquist years before coming out here, but they have simply changed my life and changed how I teach for sure. I've learned so much from them. Obviously, everyone at the Jim McLean Golf School, including Jim McLean for sure. Dr. Kwan. Michael Neff is with Gears Golf. Who knows what Gears is? All right. So Gears, the 3D system. Michael Neff is their main distributor with that. He is probably the most knowledgeable person that isn't listed as like a teaching professional out there. He could give a lot of really good golf lessons if he wanted to. David Orr, James Ridyard, David Armitage, who's kind of like my mentor, who essentially brought me back to the Jim McLean Golf School at Miami Beach. He also really changed my my career as well. This really stuck with me when I was doing the David Orr putting certification in North Carolina. I think there's a big trend out there of doing a lot of certifications and saying, "Oh, I'm certified in this. I'm certified in this. Look at me. I know all this stuff. I'm certified." And he said something after the 2 days that we spent together, because he, if anyone knows, David really tells it how it is, doesn't sugarcoat anything. When we left that room, he said, "You might be certified, but you're not qualified." And I agree with him on that too, because I don't view myself as a expert putting instructor by any means, not at all. And I'm not afraid to shy away from that. If I can't help someone, if they come in with their putting and said, I feel like I'm confident I can help the vast majority of people, but if someone comes in, I'm not quite sure what's going on, I'm going to say, nope, not charging you. I don't feel comfortable guessing and messing around with that because you need more time, right? And so I think he absolutely hit the nail on the head with that. My goal has never been to do a lot of certifications just to build up the resume. It's just been to get the knowledge from those. I think it's a great opportunity for that. I'm really proud of this slide. Again, I didn't want to put this in there, but my wife made me put it in there, and she's right. I started keeping track years ago of just how my players were playing and how they're developing, just because I want to know if they're getting better, plain and simple. I think a lot of times when people come off the golf course and you ask them, "How did you do today?" They're like, "Oh, I played bad." "Oh, okay." Next week, "Oh, I played good." It's like, well, are we getting better or not? And once I started keeping track years ago, it's just been something that I've stuck with. I've been fortunate to work with really players of all ability levels, from beginners here all the way up to tour players, and even club champions. Two of my students just won the member guest tournament here the other week, which I was thrilled to see. So 137 total wins, mostly by junior golfers. Finishing in the top 5 411 times, and I've been very fortunate to work with some Epson Tour winners as well while we've been working together. Getting back to James Lights, this is another quote that stuck with me. Who's heard this quote before? I'm sure everyone has to have heard it by now. The funny thing is everyone has gotten it from a different place. I got it from James, who, in my opinion, started the whole thing. He was teaching, he was a young head pro. He was right out of college, and the opportunity came for him to become a head pro at a small private club in Louisiana, which means he was able to give golf lessons, because everyone wanted to get a golf lesson from the head pro at the time. No video, nothing, no technology. He was giving a lesson to an aerospace engineer, Dr. Ray Lacombe, I remember his name. And at the top of his backswing, James wanted him to do something with his lead wrist. He says, "Hey, I want you to flatten out your lead wrist at the top." And so the student says, Dr. Ray says, "Why?" And he says, "Oh, because I do it in my swing." So he said, "That's why I do it." And he just shook his head. He says, "James, don't ever guess what you can measure." And so that stuck with him. That stuck with me. And at the time, couldn't really measure that, but now you can. I think that's something that's really important that everyone can kind of take away from that. Identifying the root cause is really where I come from. I want to get to the bottom of things for sure. I don't like guessing. I hate it. I want to be absolutely certain that what we're working on is what we need to be working on, because 6 months down the line, if someone is dedicated enough to jump aboard and say, "Oh, John wants me to do this with my left wrist at the top of my backswing," 6 months go by, we didn't get better at all. Didn't turn out to be the thing that we needed to improve because I made an error in my measurement and deciding what we needed to work on. So that's why I'm really, really big on that. And then it helps build a player's blueprint, and then that person can practice with extremely clear checkpoints and knowing what they're doing. Yeah.
When you say about identify the root cause, I'm kind of curious where you would kind of inject anything that maybe looking at maybe some a player's physical limitation.
Absolutely.
And so on. At what point do you kind of do that? Do you do it right at the beginning? Do you watch more swings? How do you kind of look at it?
Yes, that's a great question, because that would get into the TPI stuff. Right. There was a student I had in Miami who, and maybe it's just us as men, don't want to say things about certain injuries or limitations we had. We're halfway through a lesson. I said, "Hey, have you injured anything at the beginning of the lesson?" And he says, "Nope, nothing," because he's moving kind of strange at this point. I'm like, I don't think anyone really does this or this. And halfway through, I said, "Are you sure you don't have any injuries?" He says, "Well, I was hit by a bus in a car, and my whole right side is essentially numb." Well, that would have been nice to know at the time. That would probably be the moment it really clicked for me with that, and that was a long time ago, but TPI had already started doing their thing, and I know a lot of people will kind of bash TPI, they miss certain things, this and this, but it's really, really good for just the everyday teaching pro and club pro to help identify certain limitations that you will need to work around. Because at the end of the day, if someone has had shoulder surgery and they cannot go past here, well, they're not going to look like Adam Scott at the top of their backswing. And that is just an absolute fact. So definitely, in my lessons here, I kind of sprinkle it in with members because most people don't want to go through, even though it doesn't take long, like a 15-minute fitness assessment where they have to stand on the ground and do a pelvic thrust up in the air. But I'll ask them to say, "Hey, could you give me a little bit of this? Could you, can you turn the hips like this?" And so based on how they're moving, how they're swinging, that's when I'll kind of put them through some of those tests without them realizing it. And then I'll say, "Hey, have you injured anything here?" And they're like, "Yeah, I got into an accident here and whatnot." So definitely, very, very important. Really good question.
I'm just curious, and not to belabor the subject, but at this facility, do you have a trainer who's TPI certified who works for anybody?
We do. So we have, and he has a local gym here as well, but he does some work out of both. And we have a couple fitness instructors up there that are not TPI certified, but really only one that is. It is hard to get people to work out. They love to come take a golf lesson, but when I say, "You got to go up there," they're like, no, I'll just come and work on it. It's like, so I feel like sometimes I inherit some of that responsibility because I will force people for the first 5 minutes to do some sort of stretching.
Yeah, just briefly on that, it was when you say identify the root cause of physical limitations, workout, your fourth bullet point there is two of the biggest things I see is anybody doing workout, even just doing basic stretching. Number two, their practice habits. So I'm curious as to what you have to say on that.
On their practice habits?
On their practice habits and how they go about it.
Yeah. They don't go about it the right way.
Yeah.
Plain and simple. There are some that do, right? But even at the highest level, this is a major problem. You'll assign people certain things. I want you to do so much of this, and then what'd you do in practice? Say, "Oh, I just kind of hit balls." So that's where technology hopefully is helping, because you can, with a lot of apps and whatnot, send very structured practice plans to your players, and then it's up to them whether or not they complete it or not, right? So.
On that same line, when starting the assessment like you're doing with the physical limitations, how about the golf club?
Definitely. I'm looking in their bag.
Right away, right?
Yeah. One thing that I've noticed, I really want to do a project on this out here at some point, but with the Asian demographic out here, I have run into several ladies, mostly ladies, some men as well too, shorter with extremely long clubs. And it is changing their golf swing. It is changing their golf swing for sure. Really flat shoulder plane, everything is very upright, and then they're wondering why they're doing what they're doing, and sometimes I feel like I'm fighting the club for sure. So I'm always looking at their clubs as well. Luckily here we can measure just about anything. If I need to measure swing weights, if I need to check club length, all of that we can check and see here, but definitely I'm kind of doing it non-invasively as I start with a student. Any other questions? Yeah?
The situation you mentioned where the student did not convey a pretty major event that happened to him.
Yeah.
How often have you run
I usually just have to ask like 3 or 4 times
Okay.
for everybody. I feel like mostly guys, mostly guys.
Instead of them, whoever the student is, instead of them, after you've kind of created this rapport and dialogue back and forth.
Yeah.
It's, oh, okay, part of my job as a student is to have this open flow of communication so that you as the instructor can start guiding you on this path that's correct and not holding back with key information that can help
Yeah.
them get better much quicker than you get halfway down your progression and go, oh yeah, I was hit by a bus a year ago.
Yeah. I will say Californians are much better at disclosing that information than New Yorkers, for sure. The East Coast it's a different animal, right? Out here, everyone is usually way more chill. They're comfortable with saying, yeah, I had a little bit of this, I struggle with this. Sometimes I have to poke them a little bit and say, are we sure that nothing is off? But a lot of times it depends on where you are, is what I've found. But I will, like, they are not leaving that golf lesson until they answer that question now, for sure. Yeah.
John, if you have somebody that cannot move from head to toe, what have you found works best for them?
Cannot move from head to toe.
They just, everything is like connected.
Yeah, go do some yoga,
Okay.
definitely. I mean, I am just absolutely honest with everybody, because I feel like that's my job. If I have a truly beginner student that is struggling with some of those limitations, a lot of times it's more upbeat and it's like, yep, yes, we can do it, but we might want to do this. If I've had someone that's been playing for 10 plus years and they move like a wooden box, I'm going to be honest and say, hey, this is not going to get better until this gets better. This is what you need to go do. And oftentimes they understand that, but they may or may not do it. Some do. I've seen transformations here from a few members who, and I see them after a couple months and they've slimmed down. I'm like, hey, you're looking good. What'd you do? They're like, oh, I've just gone to the gym. And their golf swing looks exactly the same, but they are hitting it so much better. So the only thing that has changed is that they've gone to the gym and done some sort of fitness protocol. So I am really big on really fitness first, essentially. Right? I mean, I'm big on equipment too, but one of my requirements for all of my professional players is that they have to go to the gym and do some really hard workouts for a different story. But yeah, that is definitely one of my requirements. Yeah, Roger.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's one of the questions that I ask folks, sorry for my voice, is I'll ask them, have you achieved expertise in another sport? So I know how they move and what they can understand. And then I'll ask them, anything hurt? And I'll ask them that question. Oh yeah, my shoulder's killing me or whatever.
Everything. How often do you get that? Everything hurts. Like, okay. Okay, so probably breeze through this here, but I just started asking questions in my time of running into people saying, well, why did you tell that person to do that? And anyone that was just saying, well, it's just because, that's what they need to do. I think that's what they need to do. Versus some people would say, well, when we got them on TrackMan or when we measured them on this, they were not as proficient in XYZ. So questioning things is something I do on a regular basis, especially nowadays when someone says on YouTube or wherever, this is the secret to this. It's like, okay, let's go measure it. Let's find out. Right? And that gets in the second thing. And then comparing that amongst players, just because one person does it, just because one person swings 10 degrees down doesn't mean that everybody should do it. So understanding that. And then I have to decide as the coach what I need to, or how I need to communicate that with the players, right? Because, and I found this with really, really good players, they do not need to know all the information at all. Some of them want to and they don't need to. Some of them already know it and I need to kind of take some out. But I think that's what we as coaches have to do is really portray things in very simplistic terms. Is everyone here mostly a coach full-time, or is anyone? Yeah. So you already know that for sure. Okay, let's get into it here. Short game is very, very popular lately. Very, very popular. There's been some really big names that have started to drive things in the world of short game. And, you know, it got to a point where I start fiddling around here and say, well, what if I did this? What if I did this? And something's working, something's not working. And it gets to that point where you start to question things, what's actually happening with the best players in the world. This is a very hot topic. Very, very hot topic. Angle of attack in short game. So I wanted to find out what was actually happening. And so I had an incredible opportunity when I reached out to the Epson Tour with Jody. I'll give Jody a lot of credit, Jody Brothers. He was incredibly kind and gracious to let me go out onto the Epson Tour and try to collect data from the players. He didn't make it a requirement. He just let them all know that I was there. I would have to hunt them down and say, hey, would you mind hitting a few shots on my GC quad, getting some data? Most of them were fine with it, some of them not, and I said, that's not a problem. The goal was to really make it beneficial for both people, right? For me to help people understand what's actually happening with the best players in the world. And then also for some people to, for the players to potentially see, hey, maybe I could get a little bit better if my angle of attack wasn't as shallow or steep or whatever it was. So I'm still kind of in the process of going through that. But those are some of the metrics that we'll look at there. Sorry, I just have to click twice. And I captured a lot of data over, gosh, it was 4 weeks. It was like pretty much four straight weeks, pretty much all out on the West Coast, starting in California, Arizona, Vegas, and Utah. So everybody at the end of the time was coming up to me like, what's the shot this week, John? What are we doing this week? And so total, got about 70 players. Not all 70 players hit each shot, but I was trying to get as many people to do a 30-yard just stock pitch shot as possible from here to just short of where that first golf ball is. Sometimes the practice facilities were good, sometimes they weren't as good, but we made it work for sure. Then the players that had gotten the 30-yard shot, I went and I had them do just a 50-yard wedge shot, which is a tricky shot, not only just for the average golfer, but even they said as well. They said, what's the shot we're doing this week, John? I said, I want you to carry it 50 yards to that post. They said, what a weird and awkward shot. So if they're saying it, then it must be awkward for a 15 handicap. But on TV, they seem to make it look quite easy, right? But they're not showing all the bad shots. And then a very high lofted shot. If you want to call that a flop shot, you could. I'm not really putting in that category, but pretty much to a short-sided pin, 5 paces of green to work with, not much at all from a nice tight fairway lie. And so I was measuring the data on a GC quad. I was also using Sportsbox to capture what the body was doing and just to have it on video too. Does anyone use Sportsbox here at all for their teaching? Okay. Does anyone work from Sportsbox here? Okay, good. I love Sportsbox, but sometimes I don't believe any of the numbers that I see. And no matter what happens, because I've spoke to Dr. Rob Neal, Michael Neff, it will never be as accurate as obviously putting sensors on the body. But I have done some testing where someone is hooked up to a Gears 3D system and I capture the exact same swing on Sportsbox and it is very, very close. So once I saw that, I said, okay, this is good enough for me to use with good players. However, sometimes being out in the wild, in the sunlight, sometimes you get some swings that probably don't mirror a 50-degree hip turn when their hips look like this. It's like, oh, I think that would look more like that. So I try to filter through that and get rid of some of those just to keep everything as accurate as possible. And so this was essentially the question that I wanted to ask was, is there a relationship between how someone is delivering the club? Let's take angle of attack, for example. I thought for sure, I said, okay, well, we're going to see a relationship between players' strokes gained statistics around the green and something like attack angle. Okay? The players that maybe have a steeper attack angle are gaining more strokes around the green. Stuff like that. I said I wanted to find that out. I wanted to look at some other numbers too. Obviously, he was capturing everything. Dynamic loft is a hot topic, launch angle, spin, and then what the body was doing. Then I was a little disappointed. As most studies go, you're like, I'm going to find something groundbreaking, and then you really don't. But these are a few things right out of the gate. We're going to get more into it here. I think that first line kind of tells it all. As soon as I started putting the data in, I was like, there is no relationship between angle of attack and someone's strokes gained around the green. Like zero. No relationship at all. And you'll see some of the numbers from the players. The range is quite wide in terms of angle of attack. But what did stand out is the consistency that they are delivering the club and the consistency that they're getting those numbers, whatever numbers they're getting, over and over and over. So the top 20%, let's say, of the Epson Tour girls that I captured in terms of strokes gained around the green, they have 42% less launch angle variability, meaning they're delivering the same launch angle way more consistently than the bottom 20%. Similar thing with the spin variability. One amazing thing that I saw is some of the girls just have old wedges out there. I'm looking at the wedge, putting the dots on there. I say, when was the last time you got a new wedge? You're like, oh, it's been a couple of years. I'm like, you are a professional golfer. But they sometimes have hard access getting equipment. And I knew before I even captured, I was like, your spin is going to be low. Some of them were half of what they should be. And they're playing in a tournament the next day. I said, go to PGA Tour Superstore and get another wedge. It will be beneficial. Less carry distance, same thing. And the descent angle, which would be, and if anyone has any questions on this, I'll try and explain it most well I can. The angle at which the ball is coming into the ground, you would see a lot of variance in that. You'd see some players hit a great shot, the next one would be really high, the next one would be really low. So players that have consistency in their descent angle were definitely better when it came to strokes gained around the green, right?
On the wedge question, how often do the tour players, change their wedges, and how often would you say the typical, our typical amateurs should be changing their wedges? A year, 2 years? And what are the tours, with their wedges?
I saw a good video that Titleist posted a few weeks ago where they were asking him the question in the tour van, and I think they were saying they get a new lob wedge every couple weeks, 5 weeks, 5 or 6 weeks. And then pitching wedge, gap wedge, like one a year, sand wedge, 2 or 3 times a year. But not everyone has access to that, right? So I kind of look at it in the sense of, if I have a student in here and we're hitting some shots and the technique I think is quite good, and then it's not spinning or it's not doing what I would imagine, when I measure it and I say, yeah, this is lower than what I would like to see, have the luxury here of coming in, grabbing one of our demo wedges, saying, hey, we'll hit this, and then instantly notice a difference, be like, well, it's time to get a new wedge. I know Titleist was saying after 75 rounds a few years ago, then it's time to change. So I would probably stick to that, but it just depends on how many people are playing, but for sure.
I was going to ask on the topic of wedges, you're seeing nowadays with these 3D lasers that people are, instead of, if you love a wedge, they're just going to go and they're going to start grinding off, some of the materials. So it's basically, if you take a little bit off, it's a brand new wedge. Have you seen any of that, or would that be maybe in the next study? What's the difference between brand new wedge and this?
No, I haven't run into someone that's been doing that. No, I haven't run into that. Could be.
I'm kind of curious, so when you talk about going to the Epson where they've got beat up wedges, for lack of a better description.
Some of them do. Some of them do.
How much does that change their technique?
Great.
I was going to say. That,
great question.
Is from that standpoint, because you're not going to be able to get the check spin by, certain characteristics, and so on. And how does that change their style?
Yeah.
And so on, and the preference they want. Some players like hidden checks, some people like hit and roll. How's that kind of play out?
We'd have to ask them, but I would imagine they kind of mold themselves to what their wedge is doing. Mm-hmm. And so over a period of time, I would imagine if someone is creating sufficient spin and they're used to it checking a certain amount, but then it just slowly keeps rolling out, then they get to a situation and they're like, well, I'm just going to hit it and let it roll out and do its thing. I would imagine that they adapt to it as they go.
Do you see a player change once all of a sudden now they get new stuff and they can get a little bit? I'll just take myself an example. I was having trouble around the greens, got a little bit of the yips and the yips. and especially on tight lies. And so I went to what seems to be, for a lot of people, they say, a lot of hitters, counterintuitive. I went to more bounce on
Yeah.
the 60 degrees. And from there, a different soul grind on the opus wedge that I play. And all of a sudden, I'm able to go ahead and nip it a lot tighter and everything else, but it seemed to be counterproductive to that.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, because I experienced something similar for myself. I know there's a lot of talk out there, it's like, well, the grind doesn't matter. I think it does,
Yeah.
for sure. If you get something that is with the same technique, just absolutely crashing into the ground and not getting through it, I think some people will respond to that like not very well. And so obviously people don't have access to, maybe some people don't have access to getting everything perfect like a PGA Tour player does, but I think it makes a difference for sure.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
had
Roger.
a full set of fitting wedges at our course, and I took a fistful out there with all the different grinds to kind of get to the bottom of that exact question. I couldn't believe how much difference there was.
Yeah.
There were absolutely shots I could nip perfectly, and with the other grind I could not. That's such a great question though about the spin on the clubs, because you'll see a different launch window too, right? Because if you got the sharper grooves, it grabs the cover a little bit more, brings the launch angle down, spin rate up. So you're starting to see a different window, different shot.
Mhm.
A friend of mine asked Vijay Singh, he goes, how do you get so much spin on your wedges? And he holds the wedge out like this. And he goes, what do you mean? And he says, I change every 3 weeks. So he's, switching his clubs around.
Yeah.
Quickly, are you going to talk about setup in this element too? Okay, so
Yeah.
we'll go ahead there on that.
Definitely. Now this is it. I'm just kidding. But yes, but you'll probably have some more questions from there.
If we're on spin real quick.
Yeah.
In
We're not on spin yet. I'm actually going to talk about spin in a little bit, but if you go for it, Randy, if you want to ask it.
Well, just talking about angle of attack that you're talking about. Well,
Yeah.
Again, in the olden days when we didn't have all the technology, steeper angle of attack creates more spin. But what I've seen on the technology, if just utilizing more bounce, hitting it cleaner
Mm-hmm.
from the numbers standpoint, tend to have more spin rate on it. So, what do you see when people say, I want more spin?
Well, the angle of attack is a piece of the puzzle too. You can have too negative an angle of attack and not generate more spin. Right? It's true for a certain point, but definitely when we're talking about wedges, like just having a fresh wedge, having receptive conditions on the green, and having a pretty tight lie so that you can get as much friction as possible, and then hitting it somewhat solid on the club always helps for sure. But I say that before I even get into angle of attack. You can spin it with a 3-degree angle of attack. Absolutely. You can spin it with a 13-degree angle of attack, which is really what I'm seeing here. And so getting into some of the numbers here, as I said earlier, there was not a single, angle of attack was one of the things that I really wanted to look at because it was like the hot topic now. So with the data that I've captured, with the players that I've got on there, there wasn't really a definitive conclusion of saying, if you swing down 12 degrees, you will be a better wedge player. Someone else might do a study and find that there is, but I feel pretty confident that will hold true. Because a lot of the girls, some of the girls had bounced back and forth from the LPGA Tour, right? So I feel like we got some really, really good data. The average was this, though. For those of you that like averages, that was the average angle of attack on a 30-yard pitch shot from a decent lie, no tricks, not trying to, plenty of green to work with. And I just had the player hit whatever shot they wanted to hit. I said, you don't have to hit a specific shot, just whatever shot you'd hit here, right? And each one of them hit that. That was the average angle of attack. Like I said, not really a correlation with the angle of attack and their strokes gained around the green. The girl that had the lowest angle of attack on average was that, 3.3 degrees down. Pretty surprising. And then the highest was 13.2. So that's quite the range, about 10 degrees there. I will say this. There were a couple girls that were in this realm. This girl specifically, who was averaging 3.3 degrees down, did not seem comfortable on those shots. And I straight up asked her, I said, do you feel comfortable on these shots? She said, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And you could see it too. The launch angle, spin, everything was all over the place. All over the place.
Have you ever messed around with your own chipping to say, hey, can I hit a quality shot at 0?
All the time.
So what are you finding when you do that?
Pretty much what I'm finding here is there is a range, right? You can hit depends what you would say is I would say a quality shot would be something that is close enough to the hole, right? That's usable, right? If you're trying to maximize and achieve certain numbers, maybe not. But if you're just trying to hit a good shot that ends up 5 feet or closer from the pin in a certain situation, yeah, of course. Of course. And that's the hard thing with short game is that it's so situational, right? You might have a really tight lie to an uphill pin. You might have a really fluffy lie to a long, everything is changing. Uphill, downhill, side hill, it's always changing, for sure. Getting closer to spin here. I wanted to create some benchmarks on the shot, just to see what the best players, still using their strokes gained data, strokes gained around the green, what the best players are actually doing. And this is what I found with these metrics. Obviously, there's way more metrics you can look at, but not really as relevant, in my opinion, as these. PGA Tour, I have been told for the longest time that those guys are launching it between 27 and 30 degrees on pretty much any wedge inside like 100 yards. That held true for this. You can see 28 to 31 degrees. Launch angle would just be if this is the ground, this is where the ball takes off, that angle right there, okay? I thought this was interesting, ball speed and club speed. It was kind of that shot where you could essentially have the same club speed and ball speed. I always find that kind of fun when that's in there. Backspin, this was the range of the top players. About 47 to 5,400 RPMs, and it wasn't changing much. To answer your question, Roger, I can get the same shot to spin almost at 7,000 for fun, and then I can get it to spin at 2,000, but it's a usable shot. Like, what is a usable shot? And I think this is a good metric to look at as a guide to say, hey, that is enough spin, but not too much spin or too little spin that you can actually feel comfortable and control that out on the green for the variety of shots that you'll encounter. Descent angle, 31 to 33 degrees. You'll see the dynamic loft there. And just overall, the range with the top players was between 7 and 9 degrees down with their attack angle. Any questions on that?
Dynamic loft, is that on 60, 56?
It depended, most of the time for them, it was either a 58 or a 60. Okay. Some girls were using a 54 or 56, like a handful, right. For that shot. But the majority of them would be on a lob wedge, 58 to 60.
And quickly, I'm curious on tempo. Anything you discuss on that, since ball speed, club head speed, and tempo?
So I was just looking at that the other day. I didn't put it in this presentation, but on Sportsbox they do, because it does measure backswing time, downswing time, total swing time, and it does give you a tempo ratio. I think the average, I may have to tell you after, but the tempo ratio is right around 2.5 to 1 on this shot. But I've seen some that are 1.9 to 1. I've seen some that are 2.7 to 1. But it's kind of averaging out to that. It's a really good question. Because tempo might be one of those things where you can kind of simplify it and say, hey, if you're not in this tempo, I'd imagine most players are just awful with that, like club golfers, that you could almost just keep it really simple and say, let's work on your tempo today. And then you fix 7 of those things indirectly. I always want to just push over one domino and have it push over 5 or 6 others, which I think is a good way to look at it. Spin, here we go, Randy, right back to spin. Average spin, as you kind of saw there earlier, around that 5,000 mark. Again, no correlation between if you're spinning it more. John, I can spin this at 7,000 on the green. That's great. It didn't have any correlation to your strokes gained around the green. This did, though, like I mentioned earlier. So the best players are, let's say they're spinning it at 5,000. They are consistently spinning it at 5,000 way more often, right? So it's, can you achieve that spin over and over and over, which is why going back to the, let's say someone doesn't have a newer wedge, maybe it's spinning 1,000 RPMs less. If they're good at delivering it, if they can account for it, then I think they adapt to it and they just say, hey, this is what it's going to spin. But as opposed to putting it all over the place. So I would say that consistent spin is more important than just generating maximum spin, right? But you go on YouTube and you might see something else. The tie spinner would be the one. We have a few kids in the room. You know, look how much I can get this to spin. It's like, cool. That's what the best players are doing. So I would say you'd want to control your spin and not necessarily try and just max out how much you can spin it, unless the shot calls for it. So kind of winding down here, just wanted to go through some things that I saw and give you guys some numbers on the setup, the takeaway, impact, and then the follow-through, in case you had any questions on that. On Sportsbox, it can measure a variety of things. I was starting to do everything and then would see if there's a correlation. Some of them just had absolutely no correlation, so I started to trim it down a little bit. I have not gone through all of the players on their 30-yard shot yet because it takes a long time, a really long time. If Sportsbox would like to make their data easily able to export, I would be fully on board, but this is what I've found so far at setup. Chest bend would just be this, how much I'm doing that. Side bend would be this, that. Wrist angle would be the angle between the lead forearm and the shaft, okay? It's not this, okay? And then the shaft angle, this is one of the numbers. I don't know how accurate that is on Sportsbox. So I'm taking that with a grain of salt right now, but plain and simple, everyone is leaning the shaft forward to a certain amount. I think it's probably a little bit, let's say the average is 10, I would say it's probably closer to 7, just based on what I'm seeing on there when I draw some lines. But lead knee flex, trail knee flex, that's another one where I'm like, I think those would actually be higher at setup if we had someone set up with sensors on their body. They all start from pretty similar positions. I didn't see anybody start from a wildly different position that was having success. So nothing really jumped out at setup for me. Top of the backswing, I think another common thing that's being talked about is that to hit a basic pitch shot, that you should move the head, let's say, forward and down, and then up and back, right? Some of you may have heard that, maybe not, in the world of social media. So I wanted to see if that was true. If it wasn't true, I think Victor Hovland was the poster child for some teachers as an example for a while. And when he was hitting a 30-yard shot, he moved his head a full head width in front of the original spot. I was like, that's a lot. Should everyone do that? Let's find out. Pelvis sway was, again, that's just movement of the center of the pelvis to their right side, to their left side, to the lead side, to their trail side. Didn't really move that much, to be honest with you. It's pretty much centered, right, on this shot. Chest sway similar, but a little forward. If there's a plus next to it, it means their chest was moving towards the target in the backswing. Head sway, same thing. I think we can say definitively that pretty much every player, their head was moving forward by about 0 to 2 inches by the top of the backswing, which would be there, okay? Right before the hand started to drop back down. So it's not much. It's not much. I wouldn't say it's like 8 inches forward like some people were saying. Maybe if you're trying to hit a specialty shot, right? It would be. But for a stock shot, no. Chest bend, very similar, nothing really stood out there. Pelvis lift, so lifts would be if something is moving up and down, right? So if the pelvis is going down, it would be negative. If it's going up, it's positive. Again, not a whole lot with that, but maybe slightly down. Chest, same thing. Head overall slightly down, but not everybody was doing that. Some players actually went up in the backswing, okay, which is interesting. But most players, I would say with the head, it was moving slightly down and slightly forward. So I would say that holds true. But most people are just staying very, very centered and slightly moving forward, is what I took away from that. So it was nice to actually confirm something that someone said was true and not see something totally different. Impact. Everyone is forward, right? So you can see the pelvis sway is now 1.5 to 3 inches forward. Chest is forward, head is forward. There is possibly a correlation between, we'll talk about this, players that are maintaining their chest bend through impact that have a better stroke gained around the green. Pelvis list, again, pretty quiet there with the head in the little wider range. So nothing really stood out there besides everyone just continuing to move forward. All right, no one's moving back like we probably see on a regular basis. It is still my goal to get a few members here, a few select members here that would like to, at the club, to donate their time and see what a 15 handicap does compared to these. That might be a fun comparison, although I think we know what we might see. We might see a little bit of everything. Follow through, kind of just an extension of impact, except you'll see that head lift and chest lift really start to jump up. All right, so definitely one of the trends now is people saying, like, keep the club away from the ground. I would say that's true based on that. Like these players are definitely not going down through impact. But I feel like I see that every day, or almost every day. And these players are standing, it's quite simply standing up through impact. Any questions on that?
So it looked like at the beginning, when you were going to the setup element, was she looked very neutral with her secondary tilt, basically right there.
Yeah.
From there, a little bit behind. Do you see a player, there was something that came across for me, just in personal experience. We like to see a little more weight on the front foot. You see your knee bend. It's got a little bit more lead knee bend right here because there's a little more weight on the front foot and so on. But when you do that, it almost creates negative or positive tilt away from the target. So I'm kind of curious how you address it. I tell the student, you've got to be able to set your feet first and your lower body first and then your tilt second.
Yeah.
Because if you shift, you'll create basically tilt away from the target.
Yeah, you can definitely have too much tilt for sure.
And
See
where
that a
you shot,
lot.
you basically bottom out and affect your low point.
And that's one thing, like I couldn't do it there. I talked to Smart to Move to maybe long term be able to do it, but just have force plates, because that's the missing element with this, is how much pressure is on their lead foot.
On lead foot.
I think everyone's like, oh, put 70% on your lead foot. That's just a number that's been thrown around, but like what actually is it? I don't know yet. I've captured some players in here, a very small handful of tour pros on a 30-yard shot, so I need to get more. But I definitely think some people will overdo that and get to a point where they're so far forward that the only place that they can go is actually back, would be one. Another thing that I definitely see is when people put the ball really far back in the stance, they have the weight forward, they've been told to lean the shaft forward, and then all of a sudden we look like this. That usually never ends well, which is why I like to kind of stay in these ranges. Say, well, should there be zero chest bend? No, there's going to be some, right? But that's where I like to get into, like, okay, well, how much is too much? How much is not enough? How you want to get the player there is kind of up to you. But that's what I'm seeing with these. I didn't see a single person that was this way. That was taught for a while.
And I'm kind of curious, with that basically neutral and neutral tilt angle, how much does that affect the path? And did you see anything about that affecting players at this level and very, very good players affecting their centerness? Because you see a lot of good players, they seem like they hit off the toe, and a lot of designers of the clubs will put a lot of toe bias in their wedges.
Yeah, it could.
Yeah.
That would be a good question, a good correlation between essentially like their side bend and their club path. Club path, you see I don't have it in there at all. It had zero, like below zero correlation to their strokes gained. But I would say, based on what I saw, most people are very neutral with it. Some slightly left, some slightly right. But that'd be a good question.
I'd just be curious because I see a lot of good players looking at the video of them. They get a little bit of an outward cast because of that.
Yeah.
But being the fact that the club is shorter, they can make adjustments from here to the ball.
Totally.
And maybe a little off center, but it would affect, as you said, the path notwithstanding, but spin.
Yeah.
Yeah, from that standpoint.
That was a pattern I thought I was going to see a lot more, was a really vertical shaft, maybe out and over like you're saying, and then through it like this, kind of like Max Homa. I didn't really see that. I did not really see that much. Most of these players were just very neutral. Like it was just like right up and down, nothing crazy. Because I think it was just a very stock shot. They probably would get more into a pattern like that if they wanted to create maybe lower launch, more spin, that kind of stuff. But great question. Really, really good. You and I are thinking alike, for sure. For sure.
That could be a bad thing for you.
Okay, so kind of getting down to the end of it here, because I know we're kind of tight on time, but I kind of already talked about this, the head and chest correlation. Yes, I would say that there is on this shot, a slight lowering of the head and the chest, and then a pretty good extension up through impact. So if you were going out and telling some of your students to go a little down and forward and then stand up through the shot, you're not giving them bad advice, plain and simple. If you're telling someone to go down through impact, that would not be what the best players in the world are doing, but if someone needs to feel that as an exaggeration, not a problem. Not a problem. A couple more findings here as we get to the end of it. There is a slight correlation with chest bend at impact and having lower strokes gained around the green. Slight. That was the biggest thing so far that stood out. They tend to maintain that chest bend a little bit better than some of the other players that do not have as good strokes gained around the green. That would be the number 35 to 45. All this is obviously on Sportsbox. Lead wrist angle, again, was kind of more it wasn't so much the position of it, 155 to 162, it was just how consistently they were keeping it, right? So were they re-hinging it a lot through impact? Were they hinging it a lot going back? Or were they just kind of keeping it at their magic number of, let's say, 155 consistently?
Where is that being measured? Lead wrist angle, what is that of?
Lead wrist angle would be from the forearm to where the shaft is. So it's not really measuring this because there's no sensor on the wrist. I did. Does anyone know what hack motion is?
I was curious what you thought of it.
I think hack motion could bridge this gap, and I have one, and I was messing around with it, and they have some data that has been collected from tour pros. And as I was looking at it, they said, gosh, I forget the player's name. One player was so far into extension at the top of his backswing that it would look like this. So I told them, I said, oh yeah, we know that, we just haven't fixed it. I said, well, I'm not gonna use it, so fix it, otherwise it's not good. But I think that could be a good device to actually measure what's happening with the wrist through impact. That's kind of another gray area. Shaft angle, this would be another one. I mean, for a while, it was definitely taught a lot of that. For a extent of my career, I went down that rabbit hole, and like anything, you can overdo it, for sure. So on this shot, and I'll give you an insight even into the future, the high lofted shot, there is shaft lean, for sure, for sure. Players are not releasing this and getting it back to a neutral shaft plane. Like some are getting it back to where they started, most are actually increasing it a little bit more, but definitely there is shaft lean. Definitely there's shaft lean. Dr. Rob Neal, who some of you may have heard of, golf biodynamics, in his research he's found about 10 degrees of shaft lean. So I think this kind of matched with that for sure.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
So when you get a student who comes in and they already have their natural shot, and let's say for instance the wrist angle is something that you don't think necessarily is good, but yet it works with them.
Yeah.
Do you just let them keep that angle, or do you want them to work on something that you think might be more consistent for them over time, even though their natural wrist angle is already good for them?
I bring them to a shot that it would not work. So let's say it works on do you have a wrist angle that you have in mind?
Oh, no, not necessarily.
So let's say, I usually would bring them to a shot where it wouldn't work. If someone is really bowed this way, and oh yeah, I can do that from just a normal tight lie with plenty of green to work with. But if they had to really apply some hinge there from a certain spot, like out of the rough, right? That's not going to work too well out of the rough. So I'll say, hey, why don't you hit this shot a few times? And then they struggle and they're like, why can't I hit this? And then, oh, it's because of the grip. And that way it wasn't a good situation that all of a sudden got worse by you saying, hey, those are good, but let's try this. And then it's only downhill from there, potentially. it becomes a bad situation. We're like, gosh, I can't hit the shot. What do I need to do to get better? Well, it's not going to get any worse if you change their hand to here, right? Because it's already in a bad spot.
Right.
It's a good question, for sure. So I'm going to make a statement some of you might disagree with, but I think feels can be very, very dangerous. If someone comes in and they're like, John, what should I be feeling? In my mind, I'm like, I really do not care, because everyone's feels can be drastically different. I had a student in Florida who would just go this way, and I said, hey, can we get the hands to try and move a little bit more out in front of you? Once he started to get it, he said, this feels like I am taking a sword out of a sheath and slicing someone's head off. Interesting. I maybe need to run a background check on you before, but and then someone else, the amount of times, and you've all probably gone through this, where I'll ask them, I'll say, what does this feel like? And they'll say the opposite of what I'm expecting. That's weird, right? So the longer I've been teaching, the more that I think feels can be dangerous, in the sense of, if I tell you as a student, feel this, feel this, feel this, oh, they might not be able to translate it the same way. So I will just put them in that position and say, what do you feel? Like, oh, I feel like this. And that might work for that day, but then when they go to the range the next day, be like, oh, I'm going to feel like whatever that was. They can't replicate it. Like, oh, that feel's not working. Let me just grab a new feel. And then all of a sudden it's, let me grab a new feel, let me grab a new feel. I've tried all this stuff and it doesn't work. I think if people would just video their swing or measure things, they would stay they wouldn't be as feel happy. They'd say, oh, I feel like I'm doing this, but the video clearly shows that I'm doing the opposite. That plain and simple. So I've seen some funny stuff with that. And then last, but certainly not least here, I think that just goes into, I just want to take a minute and talk about what I think is the future of instruction. And I've already kind of seen it, I feel like. I feel like you're going to come in for a lesson, whether it's chipping or whether it's full swing. Obviously, tell me what the problem is and say, John, I'm slicing it, hit behind the ball, I want to draw it, X, Y, Z. It starts here. So you have to be able to measure what's actually happening. Now we can. You can, and that's why I think TPI is doing such a great job, because you're going in and they are getting launch monitor data. They are getting club data. They are getting ground force reaction. They are getting body data, so that they create just this whole blueprint of, this is what you're doing. Like, can't dispute it. This is what's happening. Well, I feel like I'm doing this. Like, no, that's not what you're doing. This is what's actually happening. Some people need to see that, because they think, like, I thought my swing looked like Tiger Woods at the top of my backswing, and then I saw this. It's like, whoa, that was a shock. Which is why I use video with all my lessons. Like, what'd you feel there? Oh, I felt like I was this. Oh, here it is. Wow, that wasn't even close. So you need to measure it first, which here at Rolling Hills, we're very lucky we were able to do that. And then make a determination on what needs to improve, right? A lot of times we don't need all the technology if we're fixing a slice. I think we kind of know what's going on there. But for really, really good players, you definitely need to, because if they are going to go out and grind on this 6 months down the line and it's not getting better, I don't want to feel like I picked the wrong thing for them to work at just by guessing. Because sometimes they just need to push and say, no, this is still the right thing. We need to keep working on that, because sometimes the results come a little bit later. Obviously, you need to train it in really, really hard. I think there's an opportunity for that in the world. I do think Sportsbox is doing a good job at that, because when people leave lessons, and Roger, you would know this too, obviously, but when people leave lessons, how do you know that they are doing the right practice? How do they know? They don't even know, unless they're videoing, right? Obviously, I'll show them. We have the USC men's and women's team practice here a decent amount. When they're practicing something, they have their tripods out. They're videoing every swing. They're looking. I'll show my 15 handicap. Let's see what they're doing out there. We should do that as well. But I do think there is a future where you can use your phone, and it's already happening, and say, well, I'm working on not standing up in my backswing, okay? Set up your phone, put it on that metric, make a swing. It says if you did it or not. Sportsbox is doing that. I think that's the future for sure. That way it's guided practice without me there saying, yep, you did it. No, you didn't. Might be bad for business for me, but that's okay, because people are getting better. That's what I care about. That is where I think the future is going right now with that. And I think there's a huge opportunity for that guided practice, for sure.
Are you using any of the things that are out there now, that the apps to stay in communication with each of your students, that actually they'll, hey, am I doing this? And what kind of apps are you using for that?
So I use OnForm, which is a video analysis app, which I think is the best. I know there's Coach Now and there's some other ones out there. I just like OnForm because of the tools. I know they're coming out with a 3D model. Sportsbox I kind of use, usually with just with better players if we're looking at very specific metrics, but I kind of take it with a grain of salt because I'm just not always convinced on the data. But those two would be the main ones that I use, for sure. And then obviously checking their statistics would be another one. That is it. You've made it. Whew. Do we have any questions? I think we got them all out.
With AI coming on board to be able to do kind of things that you just talked about, 'cause there are things that are out there saying, hey, early extension, so on and so forth. What's your view upon that? If you yourself personally is going to get more involved with that?
Like on TrackMan, we have Tracy AI pops up after 5 swings if it's on. And it'll say your dispersion is as good as a scratch handicap, but your consistency is 15, It says try to keep your club face more this way. It's like, okay, it'll just never tell you what the issue is. So yeah, my club face is open, but how do I fix it? And then people will be like, well, let me close it, do this. So if it needs to be tied together with what the body is doing, which is what Sportsbox might do. I think Hack Motion has a great opportunity to fix a lot of slices in the world of just telling people, okay, if you put the sensor on and you have a weaker grip, obviously you're not going to have as much extension in your lead wrist. If it's more like this and you're hitting slices, it can maybe guide you to, oh, we can improve your grip. They don't want to do that though, but what do I know? But I think there are opportunities there for sure.
So you're saying Hack Motion is not working at Impact, or?
No, it's set up.
Oh, it's set up.
So
Okay.
I mean, it works.
Yeah.
It works.
Especially for wrist hinge and things.
Yeah, like there's no doubt that it works, but the model, the way that they're doing it, and the way kind of like you mentioned, Randy, is you'll make a few swings with something, or you do it on TrackMan or Sportsbox, and say this is out of range. Right? It'll say, hey, your left wrist is too much this way at the top. And then a few drills will pop up and say, try this drill to get this club flatter, or to get this wrist flatter. But that's not the issue. The issue is usually something that came before it, grip. So I get people all the time, they're coming in, they're like, I'm trying to do this with my wrist, and their grip is like this, and then they're like that at the top, and then they come to impact, and it's like this. It's like, it's usually what AI is missing is it's missing the root cause. It can identify things that are out of range at certain periods, but it's not identifying the root cause, which is normally at setup. For sure. Any other questions?
Thank you, John.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We appreciate that.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Andy.